Hello and welcome back to one of my build videos. This one's for the MGSD Freedom Gundam and it's from the Mobile Suit Gundam Seed anime. So just having a quick look at the box. As you can see, it's quite a big box, comparable to probably a Master Grade size box, and that's because it's the Master Grade SD kit. Comes with a ton of sprues. I think there's about 11 in total. And just a quick look at the instruction manual. It's quite nice to see instruction manuals and stuff nowadays. With everything going digital, you don't get them in video games and stuff anymore, so it's quite a nice little thing. As you can see, I got mine from Gunpla UK for about 40 quid. It is quite an expensive kit comparatively to other SD kits, but that's because it's a Master Grade, and you'll see that over the course of the build. As you can see, there's a ton of different parts, loads of different colours in there, so no use of stickers for colour correction. So moving on to building the head here, I've made a bit of a change to the way I've done these build videos, where I'm just showing the assembly of the parts. I'm hoping that people appreciate the change. It's taken a lot of editing to get to this part. I did film the cutting of each of the parts off the sprue, but I ended up with like 6 hours of footage, and nobody's going to watch that. It's just far too long. So it's taken quite a bit of editing to get it down to a reasonable level, and I'm hoping just showing the assembly will demonstrate what goes into a build, as well as just some of the engineering and articulation that you get off these kits. The head is quite a nice little build, comes together quite well, loads of colour separated parts, and because it's an SD kit, it has that sort of chunky, chibi sort of vibe to it, so it does look pretty good. As I said, it took about 6 hours of footage to just the cutting out of the parts and the assembly. I think when you add up like finding lost parts where they've just pinged off behind my desk, and panel lining and the decals, it's probably closer to 8 hours in total for this build. It would have gone faster if I wasn't filming it. As you can see, I'm making a point here that don't panel line stuff you've already built, but I forgot to do it as I was building it, so I've done it afterwards, and I think it's come out really well. It's fantastic panel lines on this model. Just a bit of an overview of what it looks like and close up of some of that colour separation. Now building up the torso, I've tried to make sure I cut out all the parts and showcase which ones are used in that part of the build, but I haven't actually cut all of them out, because as anyone who builds model kits will know, if you try and cut everything out, you will forget a couple bits, and then you'll have to go grab the sprue to cut off the bits that you forgot. So I tried to get all of them in picture at the beginning, but if I'm honest, there are plenty of sections where I had to stop and go cut off another 4 to 8 parts. This part comes together really nicely. Again, there's some real nice colour correcting parts in there, like that metallic stuff for the vents. There's a nice transforming slidey outy bit for the cockpit that you'll see in a second as well. And overall, these MGSD kits are lovely little kits. It's a new line. There's only 3 kits so far. There's this one, the Freedom Gundam. There's a Barbatos model, which has already come out as well. And then there's the Wing Zero Gundam, which is either out whilst you're watching this video or out very soon. I've got this one, obviously, and the MGSD Barbie, but I really want that Wing Gundam Zero as well. Moving on to building the shoulders, there's some real nice colour separation there between that white and that light grey. And there's some really good articulation in these shoulders as well. You'll notice they're on hinges, those little panels. And when you build this up, there's a couple of moving parts, and the difference between this and a normal SD kit in terms of complexity is dramatic. That's why a normal SD kit's like 6 to 10 quid. And these MGSD kits are typically about 40. But as you can see with that colour separation, they look absolutely fantastic, and just demoing off the articulation here as those parts open up, and that little vent with the blue bit, that's articulated as well. So moving on to the arms, quite a straightforward build, but there are some pretty complex hinges in here because there is good articulation. It's a little bit fiddly because it's an SD kit, so smaller parts than a bigger proper Master Grade kit. But they snap together pretty well. It was a pretty easy build overall. I don't think there was anything where I was struggling to like push it into place or had to kind of lean on something to force it in. It goes together quite well, and there's, again, I'm going to keep saying the words colour separation here because that's the cool thing with MGSDs or MGs. The colour separation allows for just fantastic levels of detail. It does have slightly more complex hands, but it only has those clustered fingers where you get the bottom 3 fingers and a trigger finger and a posable thumb. It is a bit posable, but again, it's not fully articulated fingers. Looking at this articulation now, as you can see, it's got a double joint at the elbow, so the posing on this is so much better than you get on a normal SD kit. And here I'm just going to assemble the top half. It tells you to do this in the instructions, and anyone who's watched my videos before will know that I tend to stick to the instructions rather than starting with the legs like some people do. These pegs on the shoulders are pretty good. Rather than relying on a ball joint, there's a way that you put it in so those arms can't come off so well. And that top half just looks cracking for such a small kit and the levels of detail. Moving on to the legs, and as anyone who's built Gunpla before knows, this is usually the biggest part of the build. They have to be. It has to support the weight of the model and that sort of articulation when you're posing your kit, so they are really complex and quite sturdy usually, but they are the biggest time sink out of any model kit build for Gunpla. Outside of like if you have wings and stuff, which this kit does have, so you get to see me build them as well. Again, there is a ton of parts, and again, I've missed a load off. I think there's at least another 10-20 parts that aren't in that little cluster you saw at the beginning. But it's quite hard to cut them all off at once and make sure you have them all there, because for something like the legs, it can go across multiple pages. So keeping track of 30-40 parts can be quite hard. Some people don't build like this. Some people try to build where they follow the panel. So in the instruction guide, it will say get A24 and C21, and that makes the toe. And they'll cut off those parts for that panel and they'll build that part. Whereas I tend to cut off everything for that section, especially if it's things we get 2 of, like arms and legs, because the instructions will tell you build 2 of these, because by and large those parts are duplicated from the left to the right side, so it just makes your build a bit more efficient, but you have to keep track of what each part is. To be honest, instruction manuals have got really good pictures in them, so you can see which part is going to be out of your little cluster. But I know some people aren't too happy with just snipping everything off and figuring it out from there, but it's the way I build kits, so I find it more efficient and more effective. Quite a lot of detail again in these legs. As I said, they've got a lot of engineering to make them support the weight of the kit and be able to pose, but these just look great. Like that white and that grey against the blue, it really pops. The articulation as well is fantastic. Again, another double joint here. You can't really see it too well because of how it locks into place there, but it's definitely more articulated than even most high grade kits. So a nice pivot at the ankle there, again helps with posing. And now moving on to the waist. This waist section has got the typical flaps that you get on the front and the back of a Gundam kit, but they've got some incredible panel lines on them. When I was using my panel lining kit, you can maybe even see it past my fingers here. It's really stood out on some of those parts and it just looks fantastic. For those of you new to model kits or Gunpla, I really recommend you panel line your kits. There's some nice articulation here for the side parts where they pivot out like that, and here you can see again that detail those panel lines have brought out on that grey and white. Give it a little bit of a rub with my thumb, the old friction method, clean off any excess. It's a simple part of the build. There's only a couple pieces here. Again, it's not massively articulate, it's just a torso. It's something for the top half of the body to peg into, and the legs to be assembled on each side, which, as you can see, I'm doing now. Clipping really nice, just ball joints. There's no pivot on those ball joints on the legs into the torso, so we can't into the waist. So moving on to building these railguns now. These go on the side of the kit, and they've got some really complex articulation actually. If you take a look, you'll notice some of the teeth for cogs here and there. Again, lovely colour separation. That's the drinking game for this video compared to stickers, as it usually is for most SD kits. For these MGs, it's colour separation because I'm just a big fan of how they look. But these railguns have got, like I said, quite a bit of articulation where when you fold them out, those cogs will turn each other and work together. And you'll see that in a second when I finish building them and show it off a little bit. I will just clarify as well, I know I mentioned I picked up this kit from Gunpla UK. This video is in no way sponsored by them. You can probably tell that just from the view count. But it's not sponsored. I pay for this with my own hard-earned pennies. But 40 quid for a kit of this type is pretty good. Here you can see me building up the beam sabers, and those clip into these railguns. So as you can see, once they peg onto the side of the build, the beam sabers are stored there, kind of like holsters. And now I'm just going to put the top and the bottom half together. Just clips together pretty smoothly, get everything a bit straightened out, and do a bit of a 360 of the model. Just check it out. Obviously it's not complete. There's still those giant backpack wings to go, as well as a couple other bits and pieces. But this looks fantastic, just snap built. Speaking of the wings, moving on to them, this is a serious part of this build, and probably the most complex part. I'd say this took me maybe even half the time when I took into account the stickers, etc., or the decals. And there are so many moving parts to this, not just in terms of the articulation, but just the amount of components. There's, I think, 6 different parts to each side of the wings, and they've got so much complexity and detail in them. These bits here, the white bits I'm building, are kind of like guns for the robot itself, for the Gundam in the anime. And these other parts just connect together, so when you open them up, each part kind of moves the next part on. There's some pretty complex engineering in play here, just to show the articulation. And when you build them, you have to do it in a certain order, and tab things in, because there's little protectors for the pegs so they don't just fall off. Some really nice clear coloured plastic with what looks like foil or metal in there. You can see that in the background. It really picks up the light. I'm not sure it catches very well in my video, but in real life they look fantastic. Moving on to the second wing, exactly the same. Again, like I said before, one of the nice things about building things in twos is you cut out all the parts, and the first goes like a practice run. So the second time round, you know where everything's going. It just clips into place, and you just follow the same thing but to the right. So when you're done, you just slot it into the back, just as a joint that connects onto the back. And again, as you can see, looks pretty good, just snap built. Moving on to the final stage of the build, it's time to build up the rifle and the shield. The rifle has got loads of lovely colour separation there. Usually with model kits you just get is grey plastic for the gun, but on master grades or real grades or perfect grades, they do tend to have some good colour separation there, and you can really see this with the weapons and the shields here. The shield looks fantastic. That black on the actual shield itself really pops against that white and the red. And the panel lining on the back, I think, has come out really nicely. So here's the model pretty much finished. It's all built, all panel lined. Give it a quick view, have a look around, see what it looks like. It looks pretty good, snap built. And here moving on to the stickers or the decals. These aren't water slides or dried decals, these are stickers kind of, but I think they look pretty good. And just a quick 360 review of it on my turntable. I do have a new one coming at Christmas, thanks to a friend, but I quite like the mushroom one. You can see the instructions in the background for the decals. And here it is with the rifle and the shield just in front of it, and my messy desk with all my builds on the wall, as you can see in the background there. And now here it is compared to the Master Grade EX one, which is a £150 model kit. It's also a slightly different version of this model. This is Strike Freedom. It's one of the fanciest kits. And here I'm just taking a look at the articulation and demonstrating that again. I really love a double joint at the elbow. It allows so much posability and fun in the way you pose your kits. The head doesn't have a great deal of articulation, but it's better than some. And those beam rifles on the side, as you can see now, the way the engineering works when you open it up, they will kind of expand out and push each other. You can see some of those decals that have put on, those little stickers. Some people balk at them and prefer water slides. I do, but for the sake of this build, I just use the decals that are on there. It does come with some beam sabers, not any other type of saber. In case anyone's watching, it is definitely a beam saber. They look pretty cool, but I don't tend to pose them too much with it, although I have with my MGEX. So getting on to the general final thoughts and review. This is a fantastic little kit. The MGSD line is so nice. Getting that level of detail and still the quality of build that you get when you make a Master Grade kit, but in a smaller form. It's so much fun as a hobbyist. I even think the decals have come out quite well, even though I didn't follow the instructions properly. I started and then I just couldn't be bothered. So especially on the wings, it's a little bit freeform. I went a bit jazz with the stickers and just the decals, and just put them wherever I thought they looked best. And I hope you'll agree. I think they look pretty good as they are. Here you can see some of that articulation for the wings. They're a bit fiddly, trying to get them into place and to make them look symmetrical. But they're spectacular. They're big chunky things on the back of him. And when you get them in the right pose and articulated the way you want, they look brilliant. They are fiddly. They're also quite heavy, so they make the model quite back heavy, so it's quite hard to pose, and there's no peg for a base. You get action bases for Gunpla, and there isn't one on this. But after a bit of fiddling and kind of trying to adjust it to get them looking symmetrical, letting my OCD kick in where I need to make it look symmetrical, I think I've got it pretty well placed. Final score, 8 out of 10. Fantastic kit, really recommended. And there may be a surprise for the next video.